I was just lying down on the floor like, her name is Noelle. Just right there and stopped. I was just like, really? You're gonna do this and then go and show people?
Cause I'm just a teenage dirtbag, baby.
Their debut album, Wheatus.
Teenage dirtbag, baby.
For the longest time, I didn't know the backstory of Teenage Dirtbag or what inspired Brendan to write it.
I had always had the question, what is a teenage dirtbag? There's no teenage dirtbag without just murder in the summer of 1984.
I do remember people then all of a sudden were focused on the lyrics, and some people were like, I can't play a song that says that.
They were asking me to rewrite my own personal history of life, where I came from, trying to dismantle who I am. It kind of felt like the song was in mortal danger at that point.
It's not as important to win the battle as it is to win the war.
Call it a one-hit wonder or like a missed opportunity or whatever the hell you want to call it. Some people just wanted to hear Teenage Dirtbag. And we were like, sure, let's do it. I am Brendan B. Brown. I'm the singer, songwriter, and guitar player for the band Wheatus. And I wrote Teenage Dirtbag. I had always had the question, what is a teenage dirtbag? And I had always given the sort of cheeky answer, like, it's somebody who does their own thing, marches to the beat of their own drum, you know, blah, blah, blah. That's not a lie, but tracing the steps back, it was kind of like I kept bumping into this thing. The summer of 1984 on Long Island. It's not happy stuff. I grew up in Northport, Long Island. The town at the time was a sort of like a lobster town on decline, sort of cloistered, but also dangerous. Just kind of learned that you had to watch out for the older kids. I was in more fist fights by the time I was 9 than I could even count. It was that kind of a town. In the summer of 1984, I was just starting to find my musical identity. And same summer, a 17-year-old kid named Ricky Casso, who had lived on my block, lured his friend Gary into the woods, and he stabbed him to death in the name of Satan.
Northport, Long Island, a quiet community rocked by reports a teenager was dragged through these woods toward a late-night ritual of death.
The subject is Satanism.
Casso was into Satanism and rock music associated with devil worship.
He got arrested wearing an AC/DC shirt, and that was my favorite band at the time. I had a tape case full of AC/DC. And here's the Rolling Stone article about the murder. It was the first time I ever saw the term dirtbag used in its like sort of period correct vernacular is in the Rolling Stone article. Ricky was a dirtbag. He would have been called a dirtbag before the murder. That was like what people who listened to AC/DC and Iron Maiden and all that stuff, that's what they were. It shook the foundation of the whole entire town and what it meant to be a dirtbag or a metalhead. Suddenly, parents and teachers and cops, priests, everybody wanted to know what was in your tape case. I loved heavy music, and heavy music was supposed to have caused this murder. As a result, I wasn't even allowed to go to Northport High School because like my mother was like, no, I don't know what's going on in this town, but you're not going there. So I got on the Long Island Railroad every day and commuted an hour and a half to Mineola to go to high school. I really don't remember the last time I was here. Long time ago. The real time spent for me in high school was commuting back and forth to this place. I really did wish that I had a normal experience. I wished for it every day. This is definitely not the school where Teenage Dirtbag takes place. Teenage Dirtbag would be impossible here. First of all, it's not co-ed. This is an all-boys school. There was no Noelle here. When you were on school grounds, you're supposed to have a blazer on, dress socks and dress slacks and a button-down shirt and a tie. That led to a period of time where there was like zero social life. The only thing I did spend my time on productively was guitar. I just played guitar and played guitar and played guitar. I think for me, on that train, kind of looking out the window, the idea of what I was missing became this like mythology. It's like mourning the high school experience I just couldn't have had. Writing Teenage Dirtbag was like a long process because I was also writing my identity as a songwriter, what I was willing to talk about, what kind of a story I could tell and still be authentic. I had a title that I was like, conceptually writing a song called Dirtbag or Teenage Dirtbag, and it's gonna be about like Ricky Casso and that stuff. I had the guitar riff for Teenage Dirtbag going all the way back to partially in high school. I had that sort of formation, right? That E chord. That's the E chord from Tom Sawyer, you know, and it's the first chord from Back in Black. In that spot, I felt like I had to come up with a voice because every other rock band had a big song in E. I wanted to figure out how to make my own version of that. And over time, you know, came up with this. But it also can, at a moment's notice, can turn into. Well, the first verse came when I was lying on my bed thinking about Cyndi Lauper. I was just lying down on a futon on the floor, like. Her name is Noelle. Just right there and stopped. And I was like, this is so weird. You sound like a girl, and it's just like this weird story that you're trying to tell. I was really doubtful about the whole thing. And then from there to a sort of lonely triumph moment, a kind of moment of just like, I'm such a waste of life, but, you know, I can still rock, like by myself in the living room. Look, you know, no, don't look. You can't see me. Fine. 'Cause I'm just a teenage dirtbag, baby. Yeah, I'm just a worthless fuck of a person. You know, like that kind of, what do you care? Listen to Iron Maiden, baby, or don't go fuck yourself. You know, like it's just kind of like, it's a wild abandon of not giving a fuck. The third act was just one of these like, are you sure? Are you sure about this? You know. I've got 2 tickets to Iron Maiden, baby. Come with me Friday, don't say maybe. I'm just a teenage dirtbag, baby, like Cyndi Lauper. Ooh. You know, it was just like, really? And then I also wanted a second chorus. I wanted it to soar in this soaring failure. Oh yeah! And you're supposed to sing it louder. Dirtbag. No, she doesn't know what she's missing. When I get to the chorus of Teenage Dirtbag, I'm screaming at a priest, or I'm screaming at a teacher who hated my guts, or I'm screaming at my parents to try and let me go to the regular public high school. You can imprison me in this boys' school and you can make me do all these things that you think are good for me. It's never gonna change who I am. I'm a dirtbag. Teenage Dirtbag was a solo endeavor at first, before I was willing to share it with anybody. It was the same solitary endeavor that it had been when I was playing Highway to Hell when I was 10 years old. But then one day I ran into my old friend, Phil Jimenez.
When Brendan and I first met, I think it was like we were both so psyched to meet an equally weird, music-obsessed person. So one day I run into Brendan at Guitar Center.
I hadn't played the song for anybody publicly at all yet. Saw you and was like, oh man, this is Phil, it's Phil. Oh my God, look, watch this, you know? People who had heard Teenage Dirtbag were myself, my mom, and my sister, I think.
So I was like the first
You were
real
the first,
person.
and I did it in a public place, which was weird.
I was blown away, man. Like, you played the entire song,
I
by
played
the way.
the whole song.
You did the
It
girl
was like,
part.
Jesus Christ.
We're both crouched down like this. I'm playing a steel drum, right?
Yeah, you did play along, and I was like, her name is Noelle. I have a dream
I'm like,
about
okay.
her. She rings my bell. You like it? I
like it.
It was so stupid.
But it was obviously an important song. Like, I was like, I want to make that record.
I was like, you know, I would really like to work with you on this. And I had no idea what that meant. Just that I wanted somebody else who I saw eye to eye with.
Brendan and I hit it off right away. We related in that we both went to Catholic school. He suffered through Catholic school and I got out. And I think it was a real painful experience for him. In the parking lot at Guitar Center, we decided we were gonna get our studios together. And he brought all his gear to my house. My goal was to make a production that stood out as much as the song stood out. So this is the original Akai MPC 2000, and this is the actual unit we used to do the Teenage Dirtbag record. We built all the drum sounds on this, on the original recording of it. You could go and buy these very expensive CDs, and you would essentially be buying the license to use their samples. You just listen
Every
to
single-
a snare hit.
Yeah.
And then another one.
Yeah.
And then another one. And then we'd be like, ooh, that one. This thing was made, though, for hip hop and dance music.
Right, it
What
was.
we were trying to do that was different was make it sound like a real drum
real
set
drummer,
as best as
yeah.
we could. It wasn't a good idea.
It was a fucking terrible
really
idea.
bad
It was such a
idea.
dumb idea. It was all had to be edited on this tiny screen and took hours and hours with this like jog wheel.
With that, we mapped out these really complicated songs.
They don't make them like this at all.
No. Do you want to hear the mix that we did in '99?
Oh God, I'm scared.
We made our own drum samples. In my mind, we were borrowing from Run DMC and Aerosmith.
The way that the bass moved needed to be all the Motown and hip hop school. Then the guitars are where the upper body starts.
Yeah, all right, let me play it for you. And then it came in like a hard rock song from above. We spent about a year working together at my house. He would sleep in my closet. Like I didn't have an extra room. And he'd sit in there and he'd be up late writing lyrics.
That period, late '97, was where, as a four-piece, we started playing.
We started off very small. We're playing the downtown Manhattan scene. Within a year, we're getting bigger audiences and playing bigger venues.
Having family and friends to having lines around the block of people we didn't know. That's when label interest started. Kevin Patrick was a guy who approached us from Columbia Records who wanted to sign the band.
I feel like Kevin himself was a bit of an outcast and a bit of an underdog, and I think he found some kind of kinship with Brendan and that song.
My assistant actually knew about the band. I guess he would have played me Teenage Dirtbag. I mean, I just thought it's perfect. You know, if you can't feel a song like Dirtbag, you're just a freaking idiot. You shouldn't even be in the room.
Kevin Patrick was the only reason that we signed with a major label.
With our demo, Teenage Dirtbag didn't even have real drums on it. We needed to spruce it up a little bit.
Columbia Records was like, we want it like it is. We want the demo. It's finished. Oh, that's great. Well, we want to re-record it now.
It didn't need a lot of work. It didn't need to be rethought. It didn't need to be redone.
We begged Kevin to give us an advance so that we could re-record the record, and he said yes, but he had this condition. He's like, it has to be done in 3 weeks, and if it's not done in 3 weeks and it's not better than the demos, we're putting the demos out. And I was like, okay. I call my mother.
Hi.
Hey,
What's up?
we're on our way out to you right now.
Okay.
Okay, cool. Hi, Mom.
How you doing?
Hello, Mother.
It's good to see you.
So boom, crash, bang, we went flying into like my mom's house with all this gear.
And we took over the basement and the dining room and the bathroom and built a makeshift studio over there.
This is the dining room with the wallpaper that got ruined with the tapes, the blue painter tape.
You know what's funny? I'm not in a lot of these because I was actually working.
Yes.
We set it all up in here.
Do you have the soundboard on top of this?
Yes.
Yeah, it went all across this whole bay window. And then everything else was occupied with something.
Here's the board tape that she's referring to, which was what we used to mark the channels on the console.
It was pandemonium for the most part.
Okay, let's try and hit it again.
But it was wonderful. And all I would do is keep making chicken cutlets and feeding them, feed the beast.
When we made the record, that was when we really took over the house. A little wiggly there at the end. We broke it down and started over from scratch. We replaced one instrument at a time. We were working our day jobs at the same time, so we were in and out of my mom's house in the dead of night. I was like immensely nervous that we were gonna blow this opportunity. Could be better. Kindness could be better. We were 3 weeks away from making it not a demo project on an MPC 2000. I knew they were gonna put out those demos if we didn't do a better job. And it was really like a threat because I felt like the demos were inferior. We finished the album in the 3 weeks that he gave us. We pulled it off. I was exhausted. We were like zombies. We had delivered the record on the 1-year anniversary exactly of the Columbine massacre.
It started with gunshots in the schoolyard just before lunchtime, and then the carnage moved inside. 2 students murdered 13 people and wounded another 33 with gunfire and pipe bombs.
They hated jocks, loved the internet. They were known as the Trenchcoat Mafia.
Everybody at Columbia Records said something about the gun lyric.
Her boyfriend's a dick. He brings a gun to school.
There's a line in this song that says, he brings a gun to school. My role was to get airplay for our artist on Top 40 radio. I do remember people then all of a sudden were focused on the lyrics, and some people were like, I can't play a song that says that.
Walmart wouldn't carry the record. Meanwhile, down the aisle, they're selling guns, and they still sell guns, but they wouldn't carry an album that had that lyric on it at the time.
It was suddenly like something was really wrong. They said that they wanted me to sing some alternate lyric. They wanted me to write another verse or some other thing. They couldn't have possibly known what they were asking me to do. They were asking me to rewrite my own personal history of life, where it came from, and the threat of violence that I felt was the only honest way to say the feelings that I had as a kid that made the song actually exist. They wanted to remove that. It made me regress and be defiant again, the way that I was antagonistic towards adults when I was a kid. In the summer of 1984, there was a panic. Ricky being arrested with an AC/DC t-shirt on and parents blaming the music that they listened to. The Columbine massacre was, a little over a decade after Ricky Casso and my childhood, and I feel like the response didn't change at all. Why are we even talking about what somebody listened to? They wanted me to sing something else. And to that I said, go fuck yourself. Never mind. We don't need a record deal. If you don't want to put this out the way that it is, then don't. That kind of surprised everybody. They were like, well, we have to do a clean version for pop radio anyway, so let's just see what that's like. We'll put something over it. So they replaced it with the record scratch.
He brings it to school.
When we released Teenage Dirtbag as a single, the reaction was mixed. Those lyrics were an uphill battle. It wasn't just guns. It was the other lines. I don't know about Iron Maiden. What do they have to do with us? We don't play Iron Maiden. I'm like, oh my God. What do you think a kid back then listened to? I think that's why we came up a bit short.
In the first couple months, Dirtbag got to number 7 on the alt music charts. And that sounded awesome to me. And I remember that was hugely disappointing to the record label.
We didn't really know what it meant to have a flop at a major label. Were they gonna keep us? Were they gonna let us go? We wound up touring through Thanksgiving and we were all exhausted. We were just burned. It's fine. We've got a show in Lawrence, Kansas tonight in front of 2 people. They don't know who we are, but they showed up because they thought Smash Mouth was playing. So you eventually come to the conclusion that you didn't write a good enough song and you just aren't a good singer. No one wants to hear that. It was a weird time of existential questioning, coming to terms with that it was done, that it lasted 3 months and it was done.
Then all of a sudden, there was a big buzz.
2 or 3 months later is when it came out internationally.
Kevin called and he said, you're gonna be number 1 on the pop charts in Australia. You gotta go to Australia now.
Your record's coming into the chart at number 2 or number 1. Of course you want to be there.
So we went to Australia. By the time we got there, Teenage Dirtbag was quadruple platinum and was the Christmas hit of the year. None of us saw it coming. I didn't understand what that meant.
To take us out are the boys from Wheatus. This is their debut album, Wheatus.
By the time that we landed in Australia, it was like a different world.
Something picked up really fast. We played a sold-out tour and it was crazy. Kevin called me again and he said, now you have to go to England. You're gonna have a hit in the United Kingdom. It's already testing well. You're gonna do this. In 3 weeks, we were in the United Kingdom playing Tower Records in Piccadilly.
I was in England that first week. I went into Tower and they would have this long row of the top 30 songs. And their column was just completely annihilated, that you couldn't even buy it. I walked in and it was like, wow, this is definitely happening.
That was really different. That was suddenly, there was gold records being shipped to my mother's house and thing we weren't ready for at all.
We toured England pretty much nonstop in 2000.
Over there, they were conquering heroes. It was insane.
My lined up for festivals, played a show with James Brown. We were on stage in Reading Festival and V Festival, Top of the Pops. Played in front of 250,000 people at the Princess Trust party in the park. It was impossible to convey how it was doing overseas. Friends and family just didn't get it. And there's also that like kind of joke, like I'm big in Europe, you know? My cousin bought me a shirt for Christmas that said I'm big in Europe, you know? It was like a joke.
When there was all that excitement and momentum and success in the other countries, and then to come back to your own country and feel like you never even got off the ground and you're starting from the beginning, all of that becomes a poison that it's really hard to shake sometimes. I think there was a lot of bitterness that the band had towards the US company because there was this glaring question of like, how did you screw this up? It's not like, I think it should be a hit. It's a hit everywhere except here in my home, in my backyard. And I think Brendan was very unhappy. He had good reason to be disappointed and bitter.
After about a year and a half, he had had enough. I think we had burnt too many bridges with the label, and the label was sick of us, and we were sick of the label. It was pretty bad.
I'd never learned how to play the game, and I wasn't interested in it. And what I had learned how to do was pretty toxic. Like, you know, go back to the street in Northport and fight and taunt and, you know, antagonize. We got swept up by the tornado, and it dropped us off right where we had started. Only there was millions of people who knew our song. Some people just wanted to hear Teenage Dirtbag, you know? And we were like, sure, let's do it.
It's always been the kind of thing that like every couple months we hear that it's gotten big again or it's gonna be used in something.
So the record found a new life by artists like One Direction who sang it every night. And it was a highlight of that tour.
It makes me feel good about the future, that's how it can weave in and out of people's existence without me, without my intention, you know, without the dark story and all that stuff, you know.
I think a big part of our success was the connection with the fans, especially for Brendan. If you like that song, that means you understand this character.
He really hunkered down on the musicality of what he really always had. And he started to enjoy the music side more than the shiny label radio success side. I mean, they're still around today doing it when a lot of acts that had a lot of money put behind them and got played on the radio and they just kind of went away. It's not as important to win the battle as it is to win the war, and he kind of did that.
Everyone has a story about a song. That one got away, or that timing was bad on that one, or the artist didn't do this. Teenage Dirtbag was one of those records.
We never felt any kind of triumph off of it because it didn't work out that way. You know, it was slow and bumpy, and it was overseas. You never really felt it. So we just found other things to focus on and just carried on as the people that we were before the record came out.
Her name is Noelle, and I have a dream about her.
The events of Teenage Dirtbag never happened to me. So it's 100% fantasy, it's 100% daydream. The song has a happy ending because it's not something that I experienced myself. There's no Teenage Dirtbag without this murder in the summer of 1984. However, the song doesn't need the murder to survive as a piece of whatever people will see in it themselves. It's your song singing it in your bathroom mirror, you know, whoever you are, belongs to you.
Oh yeah.
And your history and your place in time is more important in the reflection of the song and the way that you see yourself in it than my thing, which is weird, but cool.
You sound good. Awesome. He really does. His voice is amazing, right? Amazing.
Stop.